The restaurant was closing. The rain outside tapped gently against the glass, echoing the quiet loneliness of the night. Alexander Hale, one of the city's youngest millionaires, sat in his corner booth, pushing aside a half-finished steak. He was used to fine dining, but tonight, even luxury felt tasteless. As he reached for his phone, a timid voice broke through the silence. "Excuse me, may I have your leftovers, sir?" He turned, surprised. A girl, no older than 12, stood by his table, drenched, shivering, her clothes too thin for the cold November rain. Her eyes, large and bright, held something he hadn't seen in years: hope. He blinked. "You want this?" he asked, gesturing at his plate. She nodded quickly. "It's for my mom. She's sick. She hasn't eaten all day." Something inside Alexander twisted. He had seen beggars before, but there was no begging in her tone, only quiet courage. He slid the plate toward her. "What's your name?" "Lila," she whispered, her fingers trembling as she picked up the food. He watched her walk to the door, clutching the warm plate like treasure. Just before leaving, she turned back and smiled, a smile that pierced straight through his guarded heart. That night, for the first time in years, Alexander couldn't sleep. He kept seeing those eyes, filled with gratitude, but also with a sadness he couldn't forget. The next morning, he found himself driving back to that same street, searching for her. He didn't know it yet, but that single act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. The next morning, Alexander's car rolled slowly through the narrow streets of downtown. He didn't know what he was searching for, only that he had to find her. The image of the little girl clutching his leftovers haunted him all night. He passed the bakery on Fifth Avenue when he noticed a flicker of movement in the alley beside it. There she was, Lila. She sat cross-legged on the damp ground, carefully dividing a piece of bread into two parts. Beside her, wrapped in an old blanket, lay a pale woman, her mother. Alexander stepped out of the car, his polished shoes splashing in puddles. Lila looked up, startled. "You," she gasped, clutching the bread protectively. He raised his hands gently. "It's okay. I just wanted to see if you were all right." Her eyes softened slightly, but her voice was guarded. "We're fine, sir. Thank you for the food last night." He glanced at her mother, coughing weakly, her skin too thin, her body trembling. "She's not fine," he said quietly. "She needs a doctor." Lila's chin lifted with pride. "We can't afford one. And people don't help for free." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He'd spent years in boardrooms discussing profits, donations, and charity, but never once had he stepped into their world. He crouched down to her level. "What's her name?" "Mary Ann," she whispered. "She used to work at a big office before she got sick." Alexander hesitated. Something about the name tugged at his memory, but he brushed it aside. "Listen," he said softly, "let me help. I can take you both somewhere safe." Lila shook her head quickly. "No. People always say that, then take us away from each other. We're all we have." Her small body trembled as the wind picked up. She pulled the blanket tighter around her mother. Alexander stood there, powerless, a man with everything, standing before two souls with nothing, yet somehow richer in love than he had ever been. As he turned to leave, he slipped his business card into the empty bread bag beside her. "If you ever need help, call me." Lila didn't answer. But as he walked away, she looked down at the card, and held it close to her heart. 2 days passed, but Alexander couldn't focus on anything, not meetings. Not numbers, not even the investors waiting for him in his office. Lila's trembling hands and her mother's pale face had burned themselves into his thoughts. That afternoon, the rain returned, heavy and relentless. Unable to ignore the ache in his chest any longer, he left work early and drove straight back to the bakery alley. The spot was empty. Panic rose in him, until he spotted a small figure sitting on the curb near the cafe across the street. It was Lila, soaked again, hugging her knees, staring through the cafe window where families laughed over steaming plates of food. Alexander parked and approached her slowly. "Lila," he said softly. She jumped, then recognized him. "Sir, you came back." He smiled gently. "I told you, if you needed help, call me. But since you didn't, I came instead." Her lips pressed together, torn between pride and relief. "Mom's inside the shelter," she murmured. "They let her rest for the night. I was just waiting." "Waiting in the rain?" he asked. "Come inside. Let's get you something warm." Reluctantly, she followed him into the cafe. When the waiter approached, Alexander ordered hot soup, bread, and tea. Lila watched every movement, her small hands gripping the table edge. When the food arrived, she didn't touch it. "You can eat," Alexander said softly. She shook her head. "You've done enough, sir. We don't take charity." He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "It's not charity. It's dinner between two people who met by chance. You helped me remember what kindness feels like, Lila. Let me do the same for you." For the first time, she smiled, a shy, cautious smile. Then she picked up the spoon and began to eat, slowly at first, then hungrily. Alexander watched her, feeling something he hadn't in years, peace. When she finished, he placed a small box on the table. Inside was a simple gold locket. "For your mother," he said quietly. "Tell her someone believes she'll get better." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. Alexander looked out the window, rain streaking down the glass. "Because once, someone cared for me when I didn't deserve it. Maybe it's time I returned the favor." The next morning, Alexander couldn't shake a strange feeling. The name Marianne still echoed in his head, familiar, almost haunting. Determined to find answers, he asked his assistant to search through old company employment records. Hours later, she returned, holding a faded file. "Sir, you asked about Marianne Lewis. She worked at Hale Industries about 8 years ago. Fired during a restructuring, under your late father's orders." Alexander froze. "Why?" She reported an internal issue, unpaid overtime and unsafe conditions in one of the factories. Instead of being heard, she was let go. After that, no further record. A chill ran through him. His father, the man everyone admired, had built his empire on silence and fear. And this woman, the one his company had wronged, was now lying sick in an alley, raising a daughter with nothing. That night, Alexander returned to the shelter. He found Lila helping her mother sit up on the thin cot. Marianne looked weak, but her eyes, soft and intelligent, brightened when she saw him. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, recognizing him instantly. "You look just like your father." He hesitated, guilt twisting in his chest. "You knew him." Her laugh was bitter, tired. "I worked for him. I thought honesty mattered. I was wrong." Lila looked between them, confused. "Mom, you know him." Marianne nodded. "He's the reason I lost everything, but maybe also the reason you're eating tonight." Alexander's throat tightened. "Mrs. Lewis, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. But I'll fix this. I promise." She shook her head weakly. "It's not about fixing. It's about remembering. Be the man your father never was." Lila clutched her mother's hand, her small face pale with fear. "Is Mom going to be okay?" Alexander crouched beside her. "She will," he said softly, though his voice trembled. "I'll make sure of it." For the next few days, he arranged a private doctor, proper medication, and a warm room in a safe house. But even as he did, guilt lingered, not just for his father's sins, but for his own blindness. As he stood by the window that night, watching the city lights shimmer below, he finally understood. Her eyes had always been trying to tell him something. They weren't asking for leftovers. They were asking for justice. A week later, the hospital room smelled faintly of lavender and new hope. Marianne's color had returned, her breathing steady now thanks to proper care. Lila sat by her bedside, humming softly, her voice fragile yet full of light. Alexander stood at the doorway, watching them. He had visited every day, bringing food, books, even small gifts, not out of guilt anymore, but affection. Lila noticed him and grinned. "Sir, Mom's feeling better. The doctor said she can walk again soon." He smiled. "That's the best news I've heard all year." Marianne gestured for him to come closer. "You've done so much already, Mr. Hale," she said softly. "We can't repay you. You don't have to," he replied. "But there's something I'd like to offer." He handed Marianne an envelope. Inside was a letter of reinstatement, and a new job offer. "I want you to come back to Hale Industries," he said. "Not as an employee, but as a consultant. Help me rebuild it, the right way this time." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Your voice was silenced once. I won't let that happen again." Tears welled up in her eyes as she accepted the paper with trembling hands. "You're not your father, Alexander," she whispered. "You're better." Lila tugged at his sleeve. Does this mean we can stay somewhere safe now? He smiled warmly. You already are. He led them outside to a small car waiting by the curb. When they arrived, Lila gasped. A modest but beautiful home stood there, sunlight pouring through its windows. This is for us. She whispered. It's for family, Alexander said softly. And you two gave me that word back. As the days turned into weeks, Marianne began working again, and Lila enrolled in school. Their laughter filled the house, something Alexander hadn't heard in years. One evening, as they shared dinner together, Lila looked at him and said, "You know, sir, you never finished your steak that night." He chuckled. "Guess I was saving it for something better." She grinned. "Like a family." He smiled back, eyes glistening. "Exactly." And for the first time in a long, lonely life, Alexander Hale didn't feel like a millionaire. He felt rich.